What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Rock Your Brand podcast. Today, we are going to be diving into, well, something that Etsy just released, and that is, well, their 2023 numbers and some really interesting things that we can kind of take away from these numbers. Now, one big thing is for people that are stockholders, this is really important for them. For us as Etsy sellers, it's also important because, we want to know, is the platform growing? Is it staying even? Is it declining? And we really do need to understand, like, what direction is it going or headed? So we're going to look at that. There's also some really interesting things that we're going to be digging into that I think are exciting. But there's also some things that could be alarming. One of them is competition. And as we know, there's a lot of competition coming in. So they actually give some numbers as far as like how many new sellers. We have, sales numbers. And we have some other interesting things that we're going to be sharing with you with what they released and really talking about, like, what does this mean? Is this going to affect us in the positive and the negative, and all of that stuff? The gift mode that was just released, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I've been hearing, and I actually just got an email yesterday from one of our students that said, hey, since they launched gift mode, it seems like sales are declining. What's going on? And actually, I didn't see that in our account, but it is something that we have to discuss, and we'll probably discuss that here as well when we're diving into everything that Etsy is doing on the forefront. All right. So with that all being said, Chris, I think I teed it up pretty well for you, and I know you've got some things prepared for our friends here today. So, Chris, what do you think? Where should we head with this?
So first, I just need to say that there's nothing more boring or generally fruitless than listening to people's quarterly reports or looking at their quarterly reports, unless you're really into like the nerdy stock stuff. But in this particular case, Scott, we've been able to get some insight into exactly what's going on, where Etsy is headed, and the impact that this actually has for sellers and potentially for buyers on Etsy. And you and I have been talking for the last few weeks about how hard Etsy seems to be pushing on gift mode. And one of the things that we pulled out of this is really why. They actually broke down some of the numbers. We're going to be sharing those as well. But the big thing that we wanted to share with was kind of the explosion in competition, the big changes that came to the platform, and what that really means for us as sellers within the platform of Etsy. And so, Scott, unless you want to, talk through what we're going to be talking about, we can go ahead and just kind of jump into some of it. But at the end of the day, this is really about competition exploding, but also opportunity exploding on Etsy. And that's really what their Q4 report showed us this year.
Yeah, well, let me say this too, for everyone that's tuning in with us live. If you could let us know right now in the comments, we always like to know where you're at. Are you a beginner? Did you just start selling? Are you through your first year? Maybe you've been selling for 3-4 years. Let us know in the comments, how long have you been selling, if you're selling yet on Etsy? So I would like to know that. And hang tight, because we've got some really cool things to share with you, but also we've got some things to talk about a little bit later about Teemu. You might have heard about Teemu. I'm not sure how you say it, but they might be coming after Amazon and Etsy. And that's another topic we're going to be talking about. So stick around for that. So Chris, with that all being said, maybe we can get the comments fired up here and get some activity so we can go ahead and see, where people are at. So we can, just kind of get, a sense of where everyone's at. So Chris, why don't you go ahead and show us what you got for these numbers?
Yeah, so we got a few different interesting things. And the first thing, the thing that everybody is the most concerned about, Scott, and it's something that when they started doing some of the things at the end of Q3, beginning of Q4 last year, like more aggressive account suspensions, getting rid of more accounts that were violating policies, a lot of those kinds of things. Of course, the immediate reaction is the sky is falling. The sky is falling, right? Etsy's out of cash. Well, from a numbers perspective, they have essentially the same amount of cash on hand. Sales for the platform were very close to last year, statistically flat, basically. But profit was way up. And there's a couple of reasons for that. The first and most important reason is active buyers in Q4 of 2023 reached an all-time high for the Etsy platform. They were able to get 92 million active buyers. And the way that they define that is that they made at least one purchase within the last 12 months. And these are numbers, Scott, that are going to be a little more interesting when we think about this in the context of the Etsy buyer survey that we did last year. And you'll see some of these things pop up. But they had 92 million in Q4, 8.4 million new buyers. And while that's fewer new buyers than they had in 2023, on top of that, they also reactivated 9.7 million. So almost 10 million people who were not buying on the platform, but came back to buy. And that number is extremely important because it means as we are moving forward, customers that are being retained by Etsy are going to purchase more. And we start to see that play out in a metric that they are calling habitual buyers. And this is one of my favorite things. And they don't define it in this screenshot from their quarterly report, but they did define it elsewhere. And essentially what a habitual buyer is, this is the person, Scott, that you are after as somebody following what we talk about, the niche-based approach. A habitual buyer is someone who has made 6 purchases on 6 separate occasions, 6 separate days, and has spent $200 or more on the platform. And we can see that 40% of their sales in Q4 came from people in that category, which means if you are able to secure habitual buyers, you are going to get a bigger chunk of Q4 sales. And this is the same thing, Scott, that we saw play out in the Etsy buyer survey. Once somebody has purchased from a store, they're more likely to return and purchase from that store again than they are to purchase the first time. And the more frequently they buy on the Etsy platform, the more frequently they return to the same stores. And if we look at our data, basically the people who fell into this category said 99% of the time, they don't even look at search. They just go straight to the stores that they've purchased from in the past. And if we're using the niche-based approach, we can secure a bigger chunk of those people who spend the most on the platform and purchase the most frequently. We can see that they also increased repeat buyers. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say before you, I mean, you're rolling here. That's good. I wanted to hear from people in the comments. How many of you do you feel you're going after like one niche or niches that are related to each other so you can capitalize on repeat buyers? I'm just curious if we can get that in the comments. Let us know. Are you doing what we're doing, the brand approach, where we're going after certain customers that can buy, whether it's one thing right now, but maybe 2 more later, or maybe they can add 3 to their cart right now because you have things in your shop? That's what we're talking about. If you guys are brand new and you don't know like our philosophy, that is our philosophy. Is like, really, how do we create a brand that someone could add more to their cart at checkout, increase that order value, and then also keep them coming back? So I'm just curious in the comments.
So the next thing that we see here is just the repeat buyers. And these are going to be, in the mind of Etsy, that next kind of step down. But basically what they're saying is they were able to upgrade. So take people who had purchased, less than $200 in less than 6 separate times. They had 126% increase of the people who became habitual buyers. So came into that higher purchasing category. Scott, if there are more people buying more frequently, and they're more likely to buy from the same store, what does that mean in plain English for people who have a store that will attract repeat and habitual buyers?
More money, more money, more profit, more revenue, probably more repeat customers in the future because you're building a customer base. Like, everything just kind of like goes up at that point. And that's why in the beginning, it's hard because everyone's trying to, and I just saw a comment come through, still splattering at the wall, like once you get past that mindset and you really just kind of, narrow down your focus and find those niches that are either, really, really close together. So that way there you can have that crossover. It just changes the game. It really changes the game. So Chris, to answer your question, it's, basically making more money at the end of the day for the business, and more revenue and more repeat customers and all of that fun stuff, bigger email lists, everything.
I think the other thing that's interesting here, and it's not on this particular slide, but it was something that we found in the data in the report, Scott, is that in 2019, they had, I think it was 2.1 million labeled as those habitual buyers. Last year, it was 2.5. Last year, so for Q4, it jumped to 7.1
That's
over the
crazy.
last 4 years, right?
Yeah.
That is an insane increase in the number of habitual buyers. And so for every time that we hear Etsy's dead, nobody buys on the platform anymore, not only do they have more buyers than they've ever had before, but they have more people buying more frequently and spending more money than they did a few years ago.
Yeah.
And yes, we had a little bit of the anomaly of 2020, but the overall trajectory is exactly where we want it, right? The path, that graph, you guys remember back to creating graphs in math class in high school, just goes straight up into the right, basically,
Yeah.
right? And we're not only seeing more first-time customers, but we're seeing more habitual buyers who are the people who buy the most on the platform. And if we can use the niche-based approach, then we can secure a bigger chunk of these people. And as more buyers come to the platform, Etsy's job is to turn them into habitual buyers from single purchasers. And we'll see here in a few minutes some of the things that they're trying to get more of their single purchasers to repeat buyers, and then their repeat buyers into that habitual category. And Scott, if we take a look at this, this is just kind of their overall growth since 2019, right? And if we're looking at the overall number of buyers, we actually beat 2020, we beat 2021, we beat 2022 in Q4 of 2023, and we're almost double over the last 4 years. Actually, it's a little bit more than double,
Yeah.
because double 2019 would be what, 91.4, something like that.
Mhm.
We're at 92 million. And so this is increasing. Now, Scott, with this in mind, right? There's also more competition on the platform. And they
Oh yeah.
said in this report that they have 9 million sellers on the platform now. But that's still 10 customers for every seller, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we have more opportunity than we've had before. It's just not the same opportunity that we had in 2018, 2019. And as Etsy starts focusing on more, not just new buyers, not just active buyers, but those repeat buyers and the habitual buyers, right? The top dollar customers, they are focusing more and more on the things that bring people back to the platform over and over again. Not just the one-time t-shirt purchase, but the things that will drive that. And what we've seen in the Etsy seller survey data, the Etsy buyer survey data, closely matches with what we see in this data, right? We see that they're recording new active buyers, that they're bringing people into that category. And the more people purchase, the more likely they are to purchase from the same sellers. So if we cannot just focus on getting the one-time sale, we can fall into this category from Etsy that Etsy is really focusing on, of getting the repeats and the habitual buyers. And that, Scott, to your point earlier, means we will sell more. Even if it's not to all of the new customers, we're
Mhm.
going to sell more by focusing on the people who buy the most. And the best way to do that is with that niche-based approach.
You know, Chris, I want to say this right now. I want to really highlight this. Why is Etsy right now putting this in their report? Okay, now this report, yes, it's for everyone to see, but it's really for their investors. It's to show their investors, like, look, we're growing, right? Like, this isn't for you, the seller, necessarily. That's looking at it and they're going like, hey, keep going, you're doing great. This is for people that are stockholders, and they're bringing this pitch deck in there to show them their growth and what they're doing, and they have repeat customers and their platform's growing. But what we need to take from it is what we've been saying all along, is if you're building a business, okay, a business, not I'm just going to go and try to sell shirts or mugs randomly. And if someone buys one on this funny design, I'm going to create another one on another funny design or try to find one. What we're talking about now is exactly what they're doing to show their investors. They're trying to sell their investors, right, on why our platform is doing well, by saying we're getting repeat customers. People are coming back to the platform. People like the platform. And what you need to say to yourself is, how do I build my business to almost present it to a stockholder? Or in the future, it could be you saying, like, my business is worth this because I have repeat customers. I have habitual buyers. I have people that are buying more than just one thing. like your business becomes so much more valuable because of this. And we've said it all along. Every time you get a new customer, you have another opportunity to get them on your email list. When you get them on your email list and that grows, then you send an email and you're able to make an extra $400 from an email, or maybe eventually $4,000 from an email. And that just keeps growing. So I just really, really wanted to highlight that because it's so darn important to understand it. And so many Etsy sellers that are coming in are just still looking at, I'm going to sell t-shirts, I'm going to sell mugs, I'm going to just do the straight up stuff that everyone else is doing. And that's not what we want to do, at least us. And I know some of you already commented and said, I'm doing the niche approach and I've got a lot of repeat customers now. Thanks so much. Right. And that's all we want to hear, from you guys. It's like, you guys are listening and you're doing and it's working. So Chris, there's my little spiel there. I wanted to kind of get off my chest in a positive way.
Fatty Pancake asked 9 million active stores. So 9 million active sellers or 9 million sellers. I didn't see an active number. I didn't see what they were saying, what they considered to fall into that. But the important thing there, Scott, and I think this is something everybody needs to pay attention to. And I have a feeling if I say this, that a lot of people are going to take this the wrong way. Scott, do you know how big of an increase that was over 2022?
I don't know off the top of my head.
21%.
That's insane.
Yeah. Now, what does that mean? That means there's more competition, but there's also more dollars being spent on the platform. There's also more people coming back again and again. So if we're playing the get a customer game, the customer acquisition game, it means we're in a little bit of a tougher spot. But if we're doing the things that create long-term brand loyalty, right? We are really focused on making sure that we're using the niche-based approach, following up with customers, using email marketing to drive people back to our store, really focusing on the long-term benefits of being able to secure a customer. And we're giving them additional things to purchase. Then we have a lot less to worry about or pay attention to. And that is kind of the one big takeaway that I have from that. That 21% growth number on the seller side sounds like a lot until you consider, and I know this is going to be coming out tomorrow as of recording this, right? We have an Etsy shop audit, right? Technically, she's been an active seller since like 2012, I think she said, right? But the store existed. She just didn't really do anything with it until very recently. And so there are a big chunk of those people. New stores are being onboarded, but a lot of those people are onesie twosies. Maybe they'll launch a few products and they're not necessarily going to stick around. But if our goal is to focus on the customer acquisition game and all of our business is dependent on ranking #1 for funny gecko t-shirt and we have nothing else to offer anybody, then we're going to be in trouble because of the additional competition. If, however, we use the niche-based approach, it allows us to spread that out. It allows us to have more inroads to be able to come in, or more lines in the water, to go back to the bass fishing analogy. And once we get a customer, we now know that if we do a few basic things, that our store, along with the things that Etsy is really focused on in 2024 and beyond, and we'll talk about a few of those here in a minute, are going to drive a lot more customer loyalty once you get somebody in the door. So focusing on that this year is going to be huge if you're not already doing that.
Yeah. Guys, do us a favor real quick. I want to pause for a second. Let us know, is this valuable to you guys? Are you guys getting some value here? Are we starting to really kind of get that point across about building a brand and focusing on repeat customers? I'm just curious if this is valuable. If you guys are getting some insight here that you guys are going to be able to take with you and apply, or at least maybe even get you thinking in that direction, smash that like button for us. Would you do that? That'd be amazing. And if you're not yet a subscriber to the YouTube channel, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure that you hit that subscribe. So this way here, well, you get notified. And like Chris said, we have an Etsy shop audit coming out tomorrow. And I have to be quite honest, I think it's the best one so far. Now, they've all been good. This will be our 4th that will be airing. I believe it's the 4th. Maybe it's the 5th. I forget now. But this one here, we went super deep and we found so many great ways for this shop to do exactly what we're talking about. And that is create products that are also going to be served to the same buyer, and some people will want to come back and buy more. The other thing that we did that we didn't do in a lot of the other ones is we did an Etsy ads little audit inside of this full length audit. So if you want to watch that tomorrow, well, it's going to be publishing on the YouTube channel. And if you are not yet subscribed, well, you won't know that it's there. You'll have to come back on your own and find it. The other thing is, one last thing, and then we'll get back into the little growth of Etsy right now and the competition. But we are actually doing our live batch recording session tomorrow. So for those of you that don't know, we have a Backstage Pass Club where we have people that are part of that join us as we pre-record these, and we go for about 3 hours. And we usually get about 2 to 3, sometimes 4 Etsy shop audits. But tomorrow we're going to do 2 Etsy shop audits, and we're going to do an Etsy ads review. So if you're interested in attending that, the private session that is, you're going to want to become part of our Backstage Pass Club. And you can do that by either going to brandcreators.com/club, or you can just click join if you are on YouTube. And it looks like we already just had someone join here today. And I was going to give her a shout out. I believe it was. There it is. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Karaoke, maybe. Maybe. Did I do that right, Chris? And maybe.
Yeah, I'd go with karaoke and Diana Burke. And if we butcher your name, it's not because we hate you. It's because we lack the ability to speak the English language, which is why we say niche instead of niche.
Or
right?
nicho.
We pronounce things the way that we pronounce things. And if we butcher your name, just correct us in the chat and we'll try to get it right the next time. Cool. Scott, with that out of the way, I'm curious what everybody else's takeaways are from those numbers before we dive into Etsy's big initiatives for 2024 and
Sure.
some of those kinds of things. I know my takeaway from this is, yes, there's more competition, but there's also a lot more opportunity if we're doing things the right way. Is that the same thing that you took away from our conversation in these numbers, or is there something I'm leaving out?
No, you're 100% right. I think the big thing for anyone to take away from this is like, okay, you hear these numbers, right? And Chris, I think you even have like a number of like, I think you do, maybe you don't, is like how many new sellers or how many people have came in. But even if you look at that number, it sounds like a lot, but here's the reality. There's people that open a shop and they never do anything with it, or they upload 5 designs and then they're done. So you have to also keep that in mind. It was funny. My son and I started a little project, and we have a podcast, and we just started it. It's like we're like on our episode 5 or something. And we were going over some stats about people that start podcasts, and those people that start, there's like, I forget the number, like 300,000, new ones that are happening all the time, like every year or whatever. Right. But out of those, there's like only 4 videos or 4 podcast episodes that actually get published out of all of them. So then it narrows you down now to where you're like, oh, now I'm in the 5%. And then if you record over 20, you're like in the 1%. So it's the same thing here. Yes, there's a lot of sellers coming in, but there's not really a lot of sellers that are doing what we're doing. Let's just say that. So just thought I'd throw that out there. Don't let the numbers scare you, but also let you know that there is competition out there and it's coming in, right?
Yeah, and your frugal friend said that the active seller stat that I gave earlier, which is 9 million currently, that's 21% growth over 2022. And they let us know in the chat that they define that the same way that they define the buyers, which is 1 or more transaction, right? So that's 9 million people who had 1 or more sales. But Scott, to your point, and this is something that would be interesting, maybe this year, we should do a buyer survey in addition to, a seller survey in addition to the buyer survey to say, hey, how long have you been around? How many sales do you have? Because I have a feeling it's going to fall in line with that same thing, right? It's the same thing you hear anytime somebody starts a new business. They talk about how, the average or like 80% or 90%, something 98% of small businesses will fail within the first 5 years. Well, that depends on how you define failure. Does it mean you just stop doing it? Because in that case, right, everybody who starts an Etsy shop makes 2 or 3 sales and then leaves because they don't like the return on investment, or they don't like the hustle, or they just literally forget about it because they're doing a million other things, right? That would be considered a failure. But what we see is something similar, right? We'll see a huge growth in sellers. And we saw this back in 2015, 2016 on Amazon. You see a little bit of an increase in competition, and it kind of goes like this. Overall, you're always going to be moving towards more competition as long as there are more buyers and sales. But don't let that 21% number scare you. That's a pretty large amount of growth. But the question would be, what are their average sales? How long are those people going to stick around? And are they truly competition? Or is that 20%, 20% of that 21% growth, is that people who posted 2 t-shirt designs and are never going to come back? That's something we'll have to wait and see. And I know, Scott, for everybody that's watching this right now, you're probably on the seller side because buyers don't really care. Like
Right.
if your stuff shows up, then it shows up. But for the people on the seller side who are watching this, I think that is a really important takeaway to know is like, yeah, there's a huge jump in this, but what really matters is where Etsy is going. And if we can focus on that, then we can make sure that we're in the successful side of this and not in that, the theoretical 20 of that 21% increase who sells 1 or 2 things and then disappears. And so if we're paying attention to what's going on right now, Etsy's doing a few key things. And you guys have all seen the gift mode announcement by now, the silly, for lack of a better word, Super Bowl commercial, like the Drew Barrymore announcement, right? All of these things.
Right.
This is kind of the chart that they included in their Q4 investor report to say, this is what we are focused on. So this is what they're going to be focused on this year. Their number one thing, the thing at the top of this flow chart, is getting buyers to think of Etsy more often. And there's 2 key things. And the second one, Scott, I think has been missed by a lot of people because everybody's been focused on gift mode, which, by the way, is trademarked. Who knew?
Okay.
Right. But on the buyer side of this, one of their big initiatives is adding in a loyalty program. Why would they do that? Because their goal is not just to try to acquire new buyers. It's to turn those buyers into habitual buyers, the people who are purchasing 6 or more times, the people who are spending $200 or more on platform. One way that a lot of businesses have had success in the past is by including a loyalty program. Now, we don't have a ton of details on this yet, but that is something that Etsy is going to be focused on moving forward. Scott, as a seller, is that something that you think would drive more sales for your store in particular, or is that something that you think would just drive a little bit more traffic on the platform? I'm curious on your opinion on that.
No, I think it's going to increase traffic and sales across the board, because anytime that you have an influx in traffic and getting people back on the platform, you have a greater chance of them finding you or coming back to you or remembering to come back to you. But this is also like, okay, that's what Etsy's doing, right? Gift mode, number one, big, right? They did that. It was a huge push. They invested a lot of money in that commercial. And you even saw that during the holidays, they had some other commercials that were happening before the Super Bowl. It was like before Q4 and it was all geared towards, what can I get Uncle John for Christmas? And then another one was like, oh, what can I get my grandmother for Christmas? And then the next one was like, oh, what can I get my father, who's a teacher, something for Christmas? And it was all Etsy, 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 right? That's what the ad was doing. It was gifts. So they're heavily, heavily trying to get people back that are looking to buy gifts. But the cool thing is, if your shop offers things for that customer to buy for one person, they're probably going to think of you for a gift for another person that's into that same type of niche, as far as like how we do it. So the loyalty program, I think, is great. It's kind of like Amazon Prime, right? It's like, if I have Amazon Prime, if I see it on a website, I'm probably going to go over and see if Amazon has it, just so I can use my Amazon Prime and get it in a day or two. Right. Or order toothpaste like I did I did last night, and it's here by the morning. Right. Like, it's like literally like that's what we're thinking, because it has that loyalty program, or it has the Prime thing that's baked right into it. So I think overall, it's just bringing more awareness, which is always good for sellers, but it's also going to increase the visibility for all of us. I don't think just for one shop.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing. And to your point, Scott, that you just made about Amazon Prime, I was having this conversation literally last night with Michelle, and I said, it drives me nuts that I can't use my Amazon Prime account here. I have their video, and they give you like a handful of things. So
which Chris is in Colombia, by the way. So if you're wondering,
you have to pay in local currency to get access to like the video side of it. She goes, well, why do you still pay for it? And I said, because when I'm in the US, I want stuff the next day, and I can still get the benefit of, the shipping stuff for the things that I order on Amazon, even if I'm bringing them to South America. Right. And then like when I'm home in May, I guarantee you, I'm going to order food from Amazon for same day delivery so that I have food stocked
Mhm.
for the week. I'm going to
Yep.
order a bunch of things that I want to bring back with me and I can get them in a day or two. So it's still actually worth it for me to keep up that subscription. Something like that on Etsy would be really interesting. Now, from what I've seen so far, I don't think they're talking about a paid model like the Amazon model. It would be more of like a Kohl's Cash model. And personally, I think that does more for buyers. The real benefit, Scott, of something like Amazon Prime, and the reason Amazon gets away with charging for it, is they have the shipping guarantees, and now they're adding in all their other things like Amazon Prime Video and some of those kinds of things. But for somebody like Etsy who does not control the logistics side of this, I don't know that that necessarily makes sense. I think more of the Kohl's Cash model would probably make sense. But again, we're just kind of speculating at this point. We
Yep.
don't know
Yep.
really what that's going to be. So these other three things I think are really important for people to understand as well. The next one down is quality. And it says, make it easier to find the good stuff on Etsy.
Mhm.
And we're going to be doing a video soon on some of the advice that came directly out of Etsy related to this. So if you haven't
Yep.
already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that. You'll get a notification for that probably like next week, early next week. And we'll be diving into some of that. But what they're really talking about here is search and listing quality. If you guys have been following us for any length of time, you have heard me rant and rave about the job of a search engine. Scott, you can probably quote this back to me right now, but I'm not going to put you on the spot. The job of any search engine is to give the person the answer to their question. In the case of somebody like Google, it's the best result that's going to answer that question. In the case of somebody like Etsy or Amazon, it is the product that they are most likely to buy. So whenever somebody types something in on Etsy, Etsy's job, Etsy's focus is to present them with that number one product that they are going to buy. And Etsy has a very thorough focus on this year. They're telling us this in their Q4 investor presentation. What does this mean? It means they're going to be changing some of the rules around SEO. It means that we need to be focused on the customer side of this and less on the robot side of this and trying to game the system. And if we can focus on creating good quality products, good quality listings that are human readable, that they're going to start to reward us for that. Now, the actual mechanisms of that, again, we'll have to wait and see. They've started to drip out some data that we'll be talking about probably next week. But that was the big thing out of all of these that really stuck out to me. Scott, any thoughts on that, or giving more value, a little bit more reliability, any of those kinds of things that
No,
you took?
I think it's interesting, and like you said, Chris, we're gonna dig into that again, on another video, because there are some really cool things that they're rolling out to kind of tell us what they want. But I think number one, like you said, Chris, we have to think about it as a human, not as an algorithm, right? Yes, the algorithm is set up so this way here it can use their internal AI to make decisions on our searches and show us more of what would be interesting to us, the buyer, the searcher. But I've always said that is like, don't create a listing just to get eyeballs if they're not quality eyeballs, right? So we just have to think about it that way. And I think that's what they're saying here is like, we need to have good quality when it comes to a listing. And I even heard some cool things that they're going to be experimenting with, even having like, and I think they've already started rolling it out, is like when you are looking on the search engine, or you're searching and you see like a listing come up, you're going to see how many are in the cart right there. Now some people have had mixed reviews on that. They said, yeah, but that's getting me too many, add to carts that don't turn into anything. But I'd rather have an add to cart and have a chance at it than not. So there's that. There's, they're going to be rolling out the coupons that expire. But then I just seen today that their color scheme's a little bit different on there, how many days are left. It's a different green now. So they're testing these things to make it a better experience. And we'll be digging into that, like I said, in an upcoming video. So make sure that you do subscribe to the channel, because we will be diving deep into that. But yeah, Chris, I think it's a good thing. And I think it's following a lot of the practices we've already been doing and preaching. And it's not about gaming the system.
And I think it's interesting, Scott, because one of the things that we hear all the time, whether it's in the Etsy forums, the Facebook groups, even in the comments, is like, why doesn't Etsy focus on doing more for sellers? Okay, they are. It just doesn't always feel that way, right? And especially when they roll out something like gift mode. Scott, to your point that you were just making about search, you were saying they're trying to make it easier for people to find stuff. If you remember back when they announced gift mode, what did you and I say about gift mode? it's a way to avoid the search engine because the search engine is hot garbage right now.
Yep.
It's filled with a bunch of things that no one really knows what it is, who it is, where it is, why it is, right? And it's a way for people who are not as experienced in all the filters that Etsy has to offer. They're not repeat Etsy users. They don't fall into that habitual buyers category, to be able to use the site in a really approachable way. And so that is a benefit to sellers. It may not feel like it. Adding in the coupons, that expiring offers, that is a benefit to sellers. Why? It's a little bit more work to set up, but it should increase conversion rate. So even though it doesn't always feel like what Etsy is doing is for sellers, because it might not show up on the back end, it might be more of a buyer experience. Etsy knows that if they can get more people to buy more things, that they will have sellers selling more things, which means they will make more money on the Etsy fees and everything else. And so they're pushing really hard on a few different things, cleaning up the search engines and gift mode to make sure that they turn as many new buyers into repeat buyers and as many repeat buyers into those top dollar golden habitual buyers as humanly possible in 2024 and moving forward. And we've had a lot of different questions about why gift mode is a thing. And Etsy dropped some numbers for us so that we have a little bit more of an idea of what they are doing. And they said, Scott, this actually goes back to 2019. So this just tells you that they've been thinking about these things for quite a while. And to your point, they test a lot of things that we never see. This seems to be something where they think they can put their foot in the ground and they can go from there. And what their buyer data said is people turn to Etsy for 3 different reasons. Holidays and occasions, right? Holidays, which I guess is just a repeat. Christmas, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Easter, Father's Day, Teacher's Day, right? 45% of the people who are buying gifts, whether it's on Etsy or anywhere else, are doing those for personal events like birthdays, thank you, weddings, right? Sympathy, pet, new house. And 10% of people who are doing it just because, right? All we ever really see is this 45% of holidays and occasions. But it's important to know that there's another 55% of those buyers that Etsy's not necessarily capturing right now. And that's where they want to double down and really ramp up gift mode. And they are saying in their Q4 report, Scott, what I have been saying since they announced gift mode, which is they think this is where they're going to plant their flag in the sand. We're all in on gifting. Right now, gifting is a fragmented and large market opportunity, right? They are saying this is the opportunity for Etsy moving forward. Yes, we're going to have the day-to-day sales. Yes, we're going to have all of those kinds of things. But if we can capture somebody because they know this is the place to go to buy gifts, then we can turn them into a repeat buyer on random Thursdays of the year. Then we can turn them into that habitual buyer and create those sales throughout the year. So they're saying this is the entry point. And right now, we used this number when they announced it, but we didn't have the Etsy number. The average person in the US spends $1,600 a year on gifts. Etsy right now captures $38 of that. And so even if they just double it, they've done a really good job. But if they can get to $100, $200, $300 of that spend, that is potentially 10, 15, 20x growth moving forward. And they have a lot of room to move. And the other number here, Scott, that really stuck out to me is this 10% number. And they're saying only 10% of US buyers think about Etsy for gifts, just randomly. That is why they are pushing so heavy on gift mode. That is why they spent what was it, $9 million or $7 million on a
ridiculous number. Yeah.
That made no sense. But if it moves the needle for sellers, it moves the needle for sellers, right? Who knows? That is why Drew Barrymore is the chief gifting officer or whatever they're calling her. Right. They are pushing to grow this number. And if they can take that $38 to $10, $20, $30, $40, even if it's just one purchase more a year, they've doubled the amount that they are able to collect per person. And they have a huge amount of room to work with, and nobody is the go-to place for gifts right now. They think they have that opportunity, and we're here for it.
Now, here's what I do want to say, though. Like, okay, there's a large opportunity in the gift space, obviously, and that's what they're going after, right? But they know also that there's going to be people that are just going to go there because they want to find a cutting board that they can make their own to go in their kitchen, right? Or maybe it's a bookshelf, or maybe it's a pillow that will be decorating in one of their spare rooms or something, right? We know there's still going to be those people, but what they're saying is their opportunity is in the gift side. So my recommendation to anyone that is watching this is to think to yourself, you don't have to think I have to have all my products as gifts. Okay. But if there's an angle that you can do that, then why not? Right. And if you're not yet offering items that could be given as gifts, this is a huge opportunity for you. Right. And I also believe that recently when they rolled out the gift mode, if your listing did not say it was a gift, you might be missing out on that opportunity. So that's one little nugget that I would make sure that I'm adding in, whether it's a tag, whether it's in the description or both, or in the title. So just I don't want people to think they only have to look at, like, they're going to create a gift store now, right? And all of these random gifts. Okay. I would rather it be like you take what you already have and then start thinking, okay, what does the upcoming holiday schedule look like? And are there gifts that are being given during that time? Like St. Patrick's Day is probably not a huge gift giving day, but it's a decorating day, right? Whether it's, you're going to go out to, a pub or whatever, and you wanted to have some type of a t-shirt or sweatshirt or something funny, or maybe it's a teacher. That could be a gift for a teacher, like something like that. But Easter, on the other hand, okay, that's definitely going to be more of a gift giving time. So you have to just kind of look through it and see where you can leverage this attention that Etsy's bringing to the platform.
Yeah, I think the quick recap of this, Scott, and I know we have a lot more that we're going to cover today. It's basically buyers are up, opportunity is up, sellers are also up. And I know we're going to be covering this in detail at some other point, but what Etsy has said is moving forward, they're actually going to be a little stricter with sellers. So hopefully we will have a little bit less of like the instant account suspensions, some of those kinds of things. They're trying out some new things for new sellers who are being added to the platform so that they can make sure they filter out all of the junk from that 21% group.
Yeah.
So the big takeaway from this for me is that there's more opportunity than ever. Etsy 100% increased from 2019 until today. They had 45 million active customers or active buyers in 2019, 92 million at the end of 2023. And that number is continuing to increase. In addition to that one-time sale, they're seeing more repeat buyers and more habitual customers, the people who are coming back 6 or more times in a year and spending $200 or more each year on the platform. And everything that Etsy is doing right now is designed around two things: getting as many people onto the platform as possible and presenting them with the products that they're going to buy. If we focus on those things in 2024 and beyond, we're going to continue to see the biggest amount of growth possible. We're going to start to see our own sales explode as we work with Etsy instead of fighting against Etsy because we have a specific way of doing things.
Yeah, Chris, before you dive into the next section, I just want to say, like, I don't know if it's just me, but we've been on Etsy now for about 3-ish years, a little bit more than 3 years, 3.5 years, let's call it. And I believe that this is the biggest push that I've seen so far. Okay. And I think that whether it's, again, like, they've got stockholders, right? They've got people that are investors, right? People that are holding stock. They need to make sure that they're growing. And I think that they really are putting a lot of attention on growing, and growing their customer base is where it all comes from. Because if you don't have a customer base, you don't have a business. And that goes for you as a seller. For me personally, if you don't have a customer base, you don't have a stable business. A customer base is going to allow you to have a stable business that grows. And we've said this before, even just going into the email example, you probably notice Etsy sends out emails, okay, about now gifts, right? Or gift modes, or here's some gift ideas for the upcoming event or the upcoming holiday, right? You should be doing the same thing, right? To grow your business and bringing awareness to your business. So I just wanted to say, like, I'm excited for what they're rolling out, because a lot of the things I've already seen that's been rolled out or talked about rolling out, I think are all positive. So yeah, I'm excited for what 2024 holds. So Chris, why don't you dig into some more numbers here?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically it in terms of what we took out of that. The biggest thing, again, is opportunity is increasing, although it may not always feel like it. a lot of the things Etsy's doing moving forward is focused on these core numbers right here, getting more active buyers and then reactivating old buyers, turning those new and reactivated buyers into repeat and habitual buyers, right? So getting more people to buy more. It may not always feel like this is an approach that helps sellers because they are focused on the buyer experience. But if they can improve the buyer experience, if they can connect more people with products, if they can connect products to brands that connect to the customer, that will naturally lead to the increase in these two things. And I know we talked about it at the end of last year when they started rolling out some of the things that were really brand focused. We talked about it back in August when they rolled out Share a Save or share. What was it called?
Yeah,
Save
share
and
and save.
share or share and save.
Share and save.
It's that does not roll off the tongue like gift mode TM does.
I think it works either way.
Yeah. The program where they give you your fees back if you drive the traffic, however we want to call it, right? That their goal is to create experiences for customers and connect them to brands that they can buy from again and again. Because just like we've harped on for the last few years about this, Etsy knows that if the people who are coming back start at the shop level, that's where they're going to start. And if it's somebody you've bought from in the past, you're more likely to buy from them in the future. That works out across every platform, every survey that we've ever done, right? Because you have that trust, assuming you didn't have a garbage experience with them, right? And so if they can focus on bringing in new customers, they can focus on improving the customer experience and making it easier for people to purchase things on Etsy, then it will make it easier for sellers to sell more. That will make sellers in turn happy. And we can move on from it feeling like they're not doing this for sellers because the focus and the talk is all about the buyer side of this. And Scott, I know you talked a few minutes ago about some of the things that they're rolling out, but they are rolling out like one-click add to cart from search results, the listing preview, some of these kinds of things to really speed up the ability for people to purchase and make it easier for people to buy things. That's
which is going to increase their conversions and that's another, another thing that we as sellers want to see, like, how can we increase the conversions? And one other thing that they rolled out is they're going to be now having coupons that expire when you have someone that adds to cart, when someone favorites your item, when someone buys something and they get that thank you email, like all of those things. So pretty exciting stuff. Chris, go back to the screen with the numbers real quick. I wanted to highlight something that we kind of skipped over. And that is,
which one?
Right there. So where it says 92 million, right? Look at male buyers grew 6%. We didn't even talk about that. If they get more men to come over and think of Etsy as a gift giving platform, that's a huge potential for them just there, because they don't have as many men shoppers, right? So that's a huge opportunity for them. And it looks like they're growing. They've already said 6% year over year. So that's amazing. So yeah, that's another opportunity. And I just thought I would highlight that because I think that's really, really cool. Guys, do us a favor. We've got a couple more things. We're going to talk about Teemu. I know that's a hot one, Chris. People are going to get all fired up with Teemu. We're going to talk about Teemu. And we've got something else we're going to talk about here in a second. Before we do though, if you guys are getting value or got value from this, do us a favor. Share this with if you're on Facebook or even if you're on YouTube, or just smash the like button. That'll help us as well. You can subscribe to the channel. Tomorrow we have a brand new Etsy shop audit that's being released. And let me tell you, when I say this one here is amazing, it is amazing. And we never know how these are going to go, by the way. But this here was great because, the shop that we were doing the audit on was having tough time with traffic, tough time with sales. And we kind of uncovered something and found out that her products were kind of hidden. So we kind of helped her out with that. And we went into her Etsy ads account and we saw that, we had some issues there. And the thing that we corrected the first time or in the first place is going to also help the Etsy ads. I'm going to leave it at that. You better tune in, because there's a lot of value packed in that episode. And also tomorrow we are doing our private Etsy shop audit, where we are actually our Etsy shop audits. We're going to be doing 2 brand new ones, and we're going to be doing an Etsy ads review session, which we've never done yet. And we're doing this for our batch recording session. And this is where we pre-record these. It's raw. We actually do it with our Backstage Pass Club. They get to ask questions, but we do this in about a 3-hour window. And then we edit them and then we put them up on the channel later. Could be weeks, could be months later. If you want to be part of that, you can be. All you need to do is go to brandcreators.com/club. And for under $10, you can hang out with us and ask questions and see these before they actually air. You can also just, if you're on YouTube, you can go to join and it'll be right near the subscribe button and you can click on it. And I think with one more click, you'll be a member. And we're going live tomorrow with our Backstage Pass Club. And I'm fired up because we've got 2 brand new ones that are going to be amazing. And then we've got an Etsy ads review that we've never done before with this group, but we're going to do one tomorrow. And I'm really excited about that as well. All right. With that all being said, Chris, should we dig in to our next topic?
Yeah. Do you want to do Teemu or do you want to do the other one first?
Ooh, I forgot what the other one was. That's why I was putting that one up. Oh, yeah. Maybe we should, because that's kind of related to what we were talking about, but we can talk a little bit more about the specifics. All right. Yeah, let's do that. And then we're going to go ahead and I think you guys are going to like this too, by the way. All right, cool. And let's see, make sure that I'm in full screen, Chris, before we do that. There we go. And all right, cool. And yeah, we got a bunch of you guys still hanging out with us, which we really appreciate. So thank you. And if you are still here, smash the like button. We'd appreciate that. All right, let's see here. All right, Etsy just released 3 brand new checklists that are going to help Etsy sellers. And myself and Chris Schaefer, we are going to share those with you right now. And you might not have even noticed, but these have been available now, or at least they've been announced, probably right in your account. And you might not even have known it. So Chris, why don't you pull up what we're talking about here, and maybe we can dig in and share exactly what we're talking about, because these are pretty exciting.
Yeah. So if you have not seen these yet, I found them because they put a giant banner across the homepage in the account that we use for sharing with y'all exactly what's going on. And I just happened to log into it because I was looking to see if their new deadline coupon feature had launched yet. It hadn't, but I stumbled across this. And if you haven't seen it yet, Scott, you can find it along the left-hand side in the menu under a section called Growth Tips. And they have 3 different, what they're calling personalized. I don't know how personalized it is. We'll have to wait and see, right? Checklists for helping you with different stages of things. And they're really what Etsy considers to be the 3 big stages for sellers. The first one is all about building trust with buyers. The second one is all about standing out in search and some of the things that you can do to help optimize your SEO and the way that you appear. And then the third one is a few things they suggest for marketing and promoting your shop. I want to dive into these, Scott, but I also want you to keep an eye out for some of the things that are massively missing from these checklists. So the first one we'll dive into here.
Well, Chris, before you do that, I don't want to cut you off, but I did want to say this. So when you are looking at these, understand that these are recommendations from Etsy. So Etsy is clearly saying what they want to see and probably what their algorithm wants to see. And so what we need to do here is pay attention. But like Chris said, we're going to also see, is there anything missing that we could add that could actually help us even more? So just wanted to throw that in there as well, Chris.
Yeah. So this first one that we see here is the trust with buyers checklist. And they're giving us a few things that may or may not be set up in your account currently. If it is set up, they may ask you to, or tell you you should change it or update it like we see, or they'll tell you to set it up. So the first thing they're recommending in this test account is basically you should consider accepting order cancellations, right? Well, obviously, if we haven't started production or whatever it is, we should probably accept that cancellation for a customer. So this is a good one. The second one here would be including a card, right? So some sort of a direct mail piece along with your product. If you're doing handmade, this is very easy to do. But if you're doing print on demand, it will depend on where it's coming from. Some suppliers will allow you to do inserts, some won't. And they have an entire article in the seller handbook that they link you over to if you click that Get More Tips section, Scott, on exactly how to do this, some of the best practices, some of those kinds of things. And this is something you and I have discussed at length after they got rid of the ability to access the emails via the API for marketing purposes as an additional way to potentially test getting more buyers, people who we know are buyers because they've literally gotten the printout, the insert card back onto our email list. Letting buyers know that you accept custom orders, right? Personalization is going to be huge. And if you
Huge.
accept beyond personalization, not just adding in a name, but adding in a totally custom design, they want you to update your settings for that. And then, Scott, this is the one that called out to me the most here, which was adding some sparkle to your shop with a personal bio. And they say engage customers by telling them a bit about yourself in your shop members section. And I know you and I have kind of harped on this pretty heavily about why you should be filling out all of these things. And a lot of times people are like, oh, nobody goes and looks at your bio. Nobody goes to the shop section. Nobody looks at anything. Etsy is telling us that people go and look at it. Why would they know that? Because they have all the analytics data. And if it helps you get more eyeballs or turns, prospective customers into customers, that can be a huge thing. I think that was it for this first one. What are your thoughts on those first initial 4 tips that they're giving this basically brand new account that only has a handful of listings that we've used to demonstrate how to set stuff up?
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to, like we've always said, right? You want to build trust very, very quickly, with a customer and get them to trust you. And obviously there's getting reviews, right? That's one thing. And that's really important, because if you get reviews, you're going to have trust kind of baked right in, because you have a third party recommending you in a sense. But I also think that the follow-up, or the build a fan base, as they said it, what they didn't say in there was, okay, put your card in there and direct them to your social media. Why would you do that? Well, you can share some of your products and stuff. Basically, you have reach, and really the reach on the social media is not that great. But the one thing that they're missing there is to build a nice little landing page where someone can go to, add their email address to get a coupon code to then drive them back to your shop. And that right there is where the share and save would come in when you're using that link, because now that's trackable. So that would just be something else I added, but it shows you that they want you to drive traffic, right? And it's kind of helping you in that area by saying, like, hey, use an insert card, put it in your package, direct them over to your social media, right? And Chris, if you can pull that back up again, because I wanted to point out something else here. And let's see, let me go back. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, and so you want to, yes, you're telling buyers that you're accepting custom orders. Well, again, you can update. It says right there, update your settings. Okay, but that's where you want to also say, oh, I guess if I'm not offering customization or personalization, I probably should. There's an opportunity. So they're looking at that. The same thing with consider accepting order cancellations. That's something there. Again, that's letting people know, like, oh, I'm safe. If I don't want it, or if I get it and I don't like it, or if I have a problem, I can go ahead and cancel. It's fine, right? So they're giving you ways to create a better experience and more trust. So this way here, it increases your conversions. Bottom line. All right, move on to the next one, Chris.
One of our Backstage Pass members just said, I have different ones listed that you are showing here, so maybe it is kind of customized. And what I'm really hoping for with this, Amazon tried something like this a few years back and didn't do a great job with it. So what I'm hoping for with this, and this is something we'll have to play with, is once I check these 4 things off, does it give me new tasks? That I don't know yet. And so what may be interesting to see here is that you fill this out. They then come back a couple weeks later, maybe even the next day, and say, all right, now that you've done that, let's do this. And you can start to move through that path. So if they are showing different people different things, one, that bodes really well for customization. And we can even tell just from looking at this, right? If obviously I didn't have custom orders set up at all, then this would probably say set up custom orders, not just update settings, right? We can see I don't have a cancellation policy in this account because it's a test account. So it might say change cancellation policy or something like that. So if we're seeing different steps in different places, that's kind of cool. This, Scott, is the one that really stood out to me, and one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation. This is what they're calling the standout in search checklist. And this is the one I think that a lot of people need to pay attention to. You and I, for the last few years, have been harping on type number 1 here, or checklist item number 1. Use human-friendly titles that buyers can easily read, right? Etsy is literally saying, write it for humans, Don't write it for robots. And we'll see this repeated over and over again in their SEO documentation. And the response that we get to that is, well, they don't know what they're talking about. Obviously, that's what they want us to do, but that's not what works in the algorithm. Well, it is, because that's what leads to more clicks, which is what leads to more sales, which is what leads to more sales velocity, which leads you to higher search results. And they're saying, in a lot of their documentation in the seller handbook, it says something to the effect of, the first few words. What they're now telling us is the first 60 titles, or the first 60 characters in that title, are going to be that most important section. Everything else we can either ignore if it's too long, or it's going to be weighted less than the first 60 characters. And that's because that's going to be the thing that's shown to basically everybody on every device. That is what they're favoring for the search results. Again, we see fill out your about section, right? Yep. Make sure you're filling out all of the shop stuff, all of the biography stuff. It influences. Now, this, I don't think, has a direct influence on search, but it would have an influence on conversion, which has an indirect influence on search. So they're saying fill out your story. People want to know that. And when people have that connection, it can improve search ranking. Why? One, we're going to include more keywords in there. And two, we're going to increase conversions. Then they're saying add top keywords to your listing descriptions. This one's kind of an obvious one, right? We should be putting keywords in our listing descriptions.
Yeah, we should.
But they're linking this over to the seller handbook article on exactly how to do that and the way that they like to see these. And then they're saying, hey, make sure that your primary image is a clear photo with an uncluttered background, because it's more eye-catching in search. Scott, why would they be telling us that?
Because they have data that says basically if you have a picture with an uncluttered background, you're probably going to get more clicks. And that's what we're talking about there as far as your click-through rate, because they're, again, trying to help you by what has worked for others. So they're just taking their data and they're looking at your account, your listings, and saying like, hey, you might be missing this here. Your pictures might not be as good as they could be. So maybe you try to improve them and you might get a little bump. And so really, to me, it's just showing you what the data that they have and kind of reporting it back. Now, Chris, I will say this. I did go into our account and I do have a little bit of a different thing here. And so ours says use human-friendly titles that buyers can easily read. The next one is list your items in the most specific category available. The next one is add relevant attributes to help get discovered. And it says attributes act like tags for showing items in search. So add all the relevant options. So anyone that says that tags aren't important and they don't use them, they're wrong. And then the last one is fill out your about section. Buyers love meeting the person behind the product, and it can improve search ranking. What did they just say, Chris? What did they just say at the end there?
Give me that one again.
It can improve search ranking for just filling out your about section. Now, we have done the about section, but it's probably not as in depth as we should have it. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write a better about section, because guess what? Etsy just said it can improve search ranking for your shop. I don't know, Chris. That to me is a no-brainer. Now, someone
that to me is the one.
If you do one of these, it will show another one. So it'll kind of like, maybe these are the top, and then it'll start kind of going down the ones that are less important.
That I guess makes sense. The about section, outside of the potential inclusion of more keywords and the potential conversion rate boost, I don't know why that would necessarily increase, but if they're telling us that it does, then it does, right? Go fill it out. Right. If you are running a bass fishing store, I would be going to my about section right now, and you can click on the add your story button, I think is what it says on my side, right? Add your story and talk about why you love bass fishing. When I was 12 years old, my grandpa took me with a line and a reel for the first time down to Hickory Creek. And, that's when I fell in love with bass fishing. I love all kinds of fishing. I love trout fishing. I love bass fishing. I love deep sea fishing, right? Obviously, write it in a human readable way, but it is a good way to share more about the shop, to connect with the buyers, and I guess to potentially increase the search results for your shop. Now, I would argue, Scott, that probably has more of a shop effect than an individual listing effect, but we'll have to wait and see. And we do have a lot of the Backstage Pass members saying, hey, I have some different ones popping up, like make sure to fill out your photos, some of those kinds of things. So as you're working through this process, it does seem like they're taking into account some of the things that you're doing and then coming back in to get a better handle on this, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, Chris. And also, if you guys are here, whether you're live or watching this on the replay, watching the video. And if you go in, maybe pause the video and then go into your account, go into growth tips, I believe it is. And then from there, let us know what yours says. We're just curious. Maybe you can just put a little list in the comments and kind of let us know. And I did also have one comment come through that says maybe it's just an Etsy Plus thing. Don't know that.
So this account that we're looking at right now is not on Etsy Plus.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
This
Well, there
is
you
a
go.
bare bones account that we use when we're setting things up.
Got it.
Now, just because we see it doesn't mean every account will see it. Sometimes it's an account by account thing.
Yeah,
Sometimes they're testing it to see if we want to use it. But this is something
Right.
that's popped up for us. Seems to have popped up for a lot of the people. And so we wanted to share this. Scott, with that in mind, I wanted to move on to the other checklist here, which is their marketing and promotion tab. What is the number one thing on this checklist for me?
Sign up for Etsy, share and save to save on fees.
Yeah. They want us to drive traffic with email marketing. They want us to drive traffic with social media. If you notice, there's two things on social media here. They're also pushing hard for giving a discount to buyers. How would you do that? Maybe posting on your social media accounts, maybe sending it in an email, right? This entire tab for me is all about driving external traffic. Now, Scott, what is the big thing missing from this list that should be item number 2? If we're going to give Etsy the benefit of the doubt and say, push the Etsy program first, what should be number 2 on this list? If we're giving them that benefit of the doubt?
Well, I mean, I would say myself personally, email, but what are you thinking?
Yeah, I would say build an email list. Why? It's a heck of a lot more productive than spending time on social media. And we know that from every survey ever. Now, is Etsy going to actively say that in their checklist in the back end after what they just did with the API? Probably not. But if you actually go look in all of their seller handbook documentation, they constantly use email as examples for things. They talk about building email lists. It's just not in my checklist. And so I'm curious for anybody who's watching this, if you see anything pop about email, let us know in the comments, because if they're missing out on that, they're missing out on the number one most productive from a return on investment activity that e-commerce sellers can do, right? Etsy, get on your game, pay attention to what's going on. If you want to drive that qualified traffic, you should be focusing on helping people build those email lists, even if they're not getting it right out of the buyers in the back end.
I would think though, too, they're probably leaning into social media because everyone has a social media account and it's pretty easy, right?
It's more approachable.
Yeah, it's more approachable. Everybody's like, oh, I've got a Facebook page or a profile, or, I could share something there. So it's pretty easy because everyone has it. I think with email, it's another thing that someone would have to do. And it's not as easy, although it is pretty easy. Okay, yeah, move on. So share the promo code with your buyers. Discount can be a great way to build loyalty and drive sales, of course. And then what's the next one here? Create social media posts in the Etsy seller app. So, with your social media page, or it says find the social media page in the more menu and use our tools to craft a new post.
The thing that's interesting here to me, Scott, right? Because then the next one is just share your selling on social media, is that they're driving you to the app to do that.
Yes.
Now, the common sense answer to this, like the first thing that pops into my head is they want you to use the app for something, for some reason. But also you're more likely to be signed into all your different social media accounts, I would assume, on your phone than you are on your computer, which is why they're directing you over there.
Yeah.
But it's weird to me that if they're going to take me to the app to do that, that they don't link me to a way to just do it on desktop, like 60% of the world would do, right? Like if you really want me to do these things, make it easy.
Yeah.
Everywhere else in these checklists that we've looked at, they're like, oh, if you don't know how to do this, here's a seller handbook article. Oh, don't know how to do this? Write 60 characters for the title, right? They're giving us helpful things. And then they're like, oh, go download the app and then you can share your stuff over, instead of just linking me to my shop on the front end and say, here's how you do it. Copy and paste your listings, right? Like just copy the URL and paste it over. But they're trying to drive people to the app because theoretically it's easier for people to wrap their heads around how to share that stuff from the app, and they want more downloads.
Yeah, of course. So I'm getting, I've got a couple of different ones. So my first one said, share your recent 5-star review. Buyers love reading rave reviews, and now you can share yours from the Etsy seller app. There it is again. The next one is share a promo code with your buyers. The next one is create a social media post like yours. And then the next one was share your newest listing on social media. You recently added a listing to your shop. Time to share it with your fans. Get the app. So those are the
So
ones that I
they don't
have
want
right
you
now.
sharing your best selling things. They want my shop, which has 0 sales because we don't do anything
Right.
with it, and it's literally only
Right.
there to show people how to set up listings.
Right.
To share my best selling listing. That one, good job AI, right,
Yeah.
on creating that checklist for me. Maybe share my new listing because there is a new listing in there that
Yeah.
has had 0 traffic and 0 sales because we do
Yeah.
nothing with the account.
Right.
Maybe flip those on the head for somebody who has a lot of sales and get them
Yeah.
to push that one. But I think it's a really interesting approach to starting to drive sellers towards doing the things that Etsy knows will result in more sales. Scott, other than the obvious omission of email marketing from the marketing and promotion tab, is there anything else that really stood out to you that would make this more useful for sellers? Or is this something you think people can jump in and get 80% of the way there just with what's already in there if this growth tips tab is already in their account?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing that I would do is go in and see if the growth tips is there for you. If it's not there for you, well, it's okay because you can still take what we just shared with you on some of the ones that you can probably benefit from, because even though it might be showing up on the accounts that we're using it for, you're going to see something maybe a little bit different, but you'll probably see very similar. And we know that these SEO tips are pretty much universal, right? And if they're telling us to fill out the about section because it's going to help you with SEO and it's going to be a conversion metric, do it. So I would say I would make sure that I go into the account, in your account, and make sure that you can find that. If you can't find it, don't worry about it. It'll probably appear. They're probably rolling this out and just kind of like in beta, and to kind of get some feedback and stuff before they roll it across all of the accounts. And maybe it has to do with if your account's brand new, if it's 6 months old, don't know that. But you can still take what you're learning here and apply it. The only thing that I would say that's not in here that I would want to make sure that I did is start building that email list. And in the description of this video, we'll drop a link that we have a resource there for free. And actually, if you just put in the comments email, we will send it to you, and we'll give you that resource. But it's basically about building your email list and using email to drive sales. It says exactly what they want. They have the share and save and all of those things. So that's what I would do. I would learn from what they're sharing with us and what we shared with you, and then just apply it. Go in, make these tweaks, and go ahead and keep creating your listings and keep taking care of your customers, and you'll probably get more traffic and probably get more sales. So that's how I would leave that, Chris. Let's go ahead and let's roll on into the last topic. And guys, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. If any of our Backstage Pass Club members are here, which I know a bunch of you are, if you had a question, you can just go ahead and drop it in there. We always prioritize our Backstage Pass Club members, so it'll get starred, and you can see the little badge by their name. And so we'll answer those in that order. But if you have a question, even if you're not a Backstage Pass Club member, we'll still try to answer it. But we do have one more topic that we want to talk about, and kind of has to do with Teemu. So we'll get into that. Chris, did you want to answer any couple questions before we jump into the last topic of the day?
Let's see here. So the increase in buyers is encouraging. Is there any information on what type of product, handmade or POD? And Scott, this one actually links directly over to what we're going to be talking about. They don't specify in that report, at least as far as I saw. I just looked at the summary version. I didn't listen to the whole investor call because that would make me want to jump off my balcony. But we did review the numbers, right? Is they're saying one of the big growth items for them was apparel and clothing. And so they don't specify handmade or POD. Obviously, if that's their growth area, most of that is going to be coming from print on demand, because there's not just that many more people on Etsy buying hand knit sweaters or, hand acid washed jeans. I don't know. I don't know what clothing people wear. So if that's where you are, that's where the biggest growth was in terms of a category. They did say that there were a handful of things that led to growth, but basically when you drill into it, it was like everything went up a little bit, and then the apparel stuff really stuck out. There was one
It looks
other
like
one that I saw.
Marion had a question, but I didn't see it. It says, "Have you answered mine?" Marion, if you could just post that again, maybe, It looks like it might have got missed with all of the other comments that came in. Darlene has one here. How do you manage Etsy customer satisfaction guarantee? And what's the process for reimbursing customers for print errors? Additionally, how do you implement a guarantee with instant refunds? Okay, so Etsy customer satisfaction guarantee. Yes, we want to have that in place. Now, when it comes to something happening with the printer, what we do is we don't ask the customer for a whole bunch of information other than, hey, can you send us a picture of it? Right. When they send us a picture of it, we're doing that not for them to say, prove to us, although that's kind of what it seems like. But as soon as we see it, we're like, we're so sorry, no problem. I'm gonna go ahead and contact our printing partner. But in the meantime, I'm gonna go ahead and just order you another one, and that's it. Right now, if they said, I don't want another one, I just want a refund, then we just give them a refund. Like, it's literally that. And I don't make them send something back, because what I don't want to do is make them jump through a whole bunch of hoops, and that, I don't know, $20, $25 that it might cost us, which it won't, because if it's a printing error, I'm going to get that returned on my end from the printer. So even if I'm out $10, right? I'm okay with that. It's worth not having a negative review. Okay. Because if they bought something and didn't get it, they can leave that review. So you want to be careful with that. And then what we do is we just reach out to Printify and we let them know, we send them a picture, and generally they're just like, okay, we'll just go ahead and print them another one, or we'll refund your purchase. And then from there, we might order another one in the meantime. And then that's just going to be a brand new purchase. So that's kind of how we handle it.
Yeah, I was able to find, I think this was Miriam's question. She said, I want to sell mainly in the US. How about if I want to use the same design in the EU market? Do I need to research on the EU, such as German? So if you're selling mainly in the US, then you focus on that. There is going to be some crossover. If you want to sell German specific things, you're going to want to translate that listing into German, make sure you have a good German speaker, right? There are going to be some designs that are different, but if your goal is to sell the majority of your stuff in the US, I would default to the US for the market research side of that. And then if there's like a really specific German thing that pops up that you see in your market research in the German market, then look at that as well. And Scott, one other one snuck in here from Elysian Workshop, who said, I have a question off topic though. Been following you guys forever since the Amazon days. Do you still sell on Amazon? If not, why not? What is your main reason for focusing on Etsy? So to start off, I still do a lot with Amazon on the e-commerce consulting side of what I do. But the main reason, and I'm going to speak for Scott here, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, that we started looking at Etsy was we sold our last big brand that we were involved with on Amazon back in, good Lord, 2020.
Yeah.
And we're looking for a way to stay involved in the e-commerce space that didn't involve shipping stuff from China, that didn't involve $10, $20, $30,000 in capital outlay. And yes, we could have looked at Amazon merch and some of those kinds of things, but that was still invite only. And so we looked for a way to take all of the principles of building a brand that has long-term value and applying that to something that has a low startup cost and a lot less friction and stress headaches and all of those kinds of things. And that's kind of how we came to settle on Etsy. And Scott, I know there's a whole story about how you found Etsy. And if you want to get into that, we can talk about that for a minute before we dive into the next topic as well.
Yeah. I mean, you summed it up pretty well. Here's the bottom line. When you run a physical product business with inventory, it's a lot of work. And I did it with two separate brands. And the last brand that we had our own warehouse. We, had to go there and check in or check in shipments and then ship them back out and get them in. They didn't get into Amazon. We had to wait, like all of the things that it was a lot of stress. And it wasn't just me doing it. I had another partner and she was doing a lot of it and she was burnt out and so was I. So we were like, you know what, once we sell this, we're going to take a break. So I just intended on doing a break there. Still podcasting, still, at that time I was building niche sites and basically content sites. I still have them, by the way. But then from there, my wife was introduced to Etsy by a friend, my old partner, and she was dabbling with Etsy and having some pretty good results. And my wife is very creative, and my wife's like, yeah, that'd be a nice little creative outlet. She did that, and it turned into a nice little side business. And then I started to say, hey, this is pretty cool. Like, there's no inventory, and you can sell endless products and not have to carry the inventory. And that's when I got involved. So yes, I do not sell on Amazon currently, but not saying I never will again. But I was on there for over 8-9 years. So I just wanted a break, and I wanted a break from inventory, and Pod allowed us to do that. And that's what we're doing. And I'm running brand creators. So there you go. Hopefully that answered it. All right, let's go on and let's wrap this up with some Teemu. And I know that's going to be a good one. So let's do this. All right. The big question that Etsy sellers are wondering is, will Teemu put an end to Etsy? Will it put Etsy out of business? Heck, will it put Amazon out of business? Because right now, Teemu is blowing up and you're seeing ads everywhere. And guess what? We're also seeing them take product images from our Etsy shops and using them on Teemu. And there's nothing that we can really do about it. So the question is, what are we going to do? There was actually an article written recently, which we're going to dig into that. And I've got Chris Schaefer here with me to kind of go through this as far as what kind of hit has this already done, and should we be concerned with Teemu and Etsy? So Chris, why don't you pull that article up if you would do so, please?
Yeah, I have that pulled up over here, the MSN version. Let me go ahead and share this with us. And what we can see is that they're saying, is it an orange flag for Etsy, right? They're saying, is this the end of Etsy as we know it? And Scott, people may or may not know there's about 28 different versions of this article. But what people may or may not know is the rise of Teemu over the last few years has meant a huge decrease in what Amazon has in the apparel category. And it's not to say that that's a one-for-one reason, right?
Sure.
But it correlates pretty darn well. And if we look at the Q4 report from Etsy, what was that biggest growth? The biggest growth category? It was clothing and apparel, right? So if they're coming into the US and taking up more of the market share, is that something that's going to negatively affect Etsy? And this article specifically is looking at the impact that it's having on the market share of Wayfair, because they're more like an Amazon, right? It's an everything type of a store.
Yeah.
So, whether it's furniture and decorations like you'd find on Wayfair, or whether it's clothing. And our good friend, Steve Chu, recently had somebody on who has a great e-commerce business selling different t-shirts, much like many people do on Etsy, although he does most of his business on his own website. He saw a dramatic drop and attributes that to Teemu as well. So we're seeing that on individual e-commerce sites. We're seeing Amazon starting to struggle in that category. Before we even dive into all of the ins and outs of Teemu, Scott, what does that tell you about protecting yourself in the Etsy ecosystem? Is there anything sellers should be paying attention to from those two lessons before we even dive into some of the ins and outs?
Well, it's things that we've talked about before. And I think, yes, there's always going to be a knockoff market, right? That people that they're going to find it somewhere else, but they're also going to probably find that the quality is not going to be there, and then they can be disappointed. But I think the big thing here for us as Etsy sellers is to, number one, have great products. Number two, continue to offer personalization. Number three, make sure that you are doing an amazing job with customer service, because that's where I think Teemu will probably lack. I can't say for certain, but that's why we talk about building a brand, because if someone buys from our shop, we're building somewhat of some brand loyalty. Okay. And they're not just coming to our shop to buy a one-off of something, right? Teemu, yes, you're able to go on there and buy a bass fishing shirt, and then you're going to go search for something else, and you're doing it because it's cheap. But also you're not getting it as quick. A lot of times it takes 2 to 3 weeks before you get it. So that's another side of it. So me personally, and Chris, I think I'm answering your question, is like, we can still do these things to make ourselves stand out amongst a Teemu, because we are able to now still deliver a better product and a better experience. And I think Etsy is going to be aware of this, and Etsy's going to try to also make it where they don't take over their platform.
Maybe, do you think possibly that's why they trademarked gift mode and they're doing the gift mode push. They're saying,
Probably.
Teemu,
Yeah.
if you want just a random junk, you can go to Teemu. But if you want a
Yeah.
gift that somebody's really going to like, come to Etsy. And I think there's a couple interesting things that came out of that article, Scott. The first one was they're saying, hey, they're kind of eating everybody's lunch right now. But what they don't share in that article, and I believe Wired did an article on this, I think it was last summer. They said the reason prices are so low on Teemu is twofold. One, the labor practices used by a lot of the producers, not so hot,
Yeah.
right? And number two, they're actually losing an average of $30 per order. So the question is, can they outspend Amazon, Etsy, Wayfair, all of these places to get enough market share before the capital runway runs out at losing $30 an order? Or can we kind of resist against that headwind long enough? And the answer to that is that should be the goal for anybody on Etsy. If we have a single product focused store, we're creating just designs for t-shirts, just designs for coffee mugs, chances are that Teemu's entry into the US market could eat your lunch because they're able to produce it for literally pennies on the dollar and ship it using some of the loopholes in international shipping laws to get it to you in as little as 3 to 5 days, even though sometimes that will extend out to, 7 to 10 to maybe even 2 weeks in some cases. So while this seems scary, and while a lot of people are buying on Teemu, there's a couple things that we probably want to keep in mind with this. The first is that capital runway running out. The $30 loss per order, that's not something that they can sustain forever. Even if you have the entire government of China behind you, at some point they're gonna be like, hey, this is just silly, right?
Yeah.
We're not winning. Thing number two is the repeat buyers. And Scott, this speaks to the customer service side of this. This speaks to the personalization side of this. This speaks to the product selection and quality side of this. A lot of the stuff on Teemu is not as good as the stuff that you would find other places. Some of it's great, right? But because they're producing things at such a low cost, you do have some of those issues. Just like, Scott, do you remember Wish.com and how that blew up a little while ago? And it was like, oh yeah, Wish.com is going to eat Amazon's lunch. And then when you actually got stuff from Wish.com that you paid $5 for the newest AMD graphics card or whatever it was, right? Like the newest AMD processor or a new Intel chip for your computer, it came and it was like a toy version for $2. Makes sense, right? What we see with Teemu is that they're not getting the repeat customers. And if you guys have seen the video that we did on Etsy's Q4 report, you will know that Etsy's goal is repeat buyers. And one of the things, Scott, in this article that really stuck out to me was the number of repeat buyers. And I want to see if I can find it here. 30% of customers who purchased from Teemu in September returned a month later. However, only 4% of them were still returning 4 months later, right? So it dropped in just a few months during the hottest gifting time of the year. It dropped by half in terms of return customers because people are having issues with quality. People are having issues with timelines. People are having some issues with some of the labor practices. People are having issues with a lot of things with Teemu. So just because they're coming into the market and it feels like they are the 900-pound gorilla in the room right now, does not mean that they're going to eat everybody's lunch. It does not mean that they're going to crush Etsy. It does mean we have to pay a little bit of attention to the things that we're doing. But the good news, at least in my mind, Scott, and I want to get your opinion on this as well, is the things that we can do to build our walls, shore up our defenses, are the things that any good business should be doing anyway. Focusing on the customer service, focusing on creating repeat customers, focusing on good quality products and great designs that people are looking for. Is there anything that I'm missing there?
No. I mean, okay. So it's valid concerns. Like, I mean, for us to sit here and say like it's not a valid concern, it is. And I saw in the comments, someone had said, yeah, I've been seeing people buy stuff from Teemu and then selling it on Etsy. Is that okay? That's going to be hard to police because you're not saying it's coming from Teemu. You're just basically doing what we used to do with Alibaba and AliExpress. You're buying something at a discount and you're selling it. People do that, by the way, right now on eBay. You buy stuff on eBay and then sell it on Etsy, or vice versa. Buy it on Etsy, sell it on eBay. Like, people have been doing that for years. So there's nothing really that's going to prevent that, other than, I do believe, because Etsy is going down this gift route, the more personalization, customization you can do will make it harder for you to be knocked off. So I would say I would be leaning into that as much as I could, or making something that isn't as easy to copy. Now, I'm not saying that Teemu can't do personalization, because they'll probably do that if they aren't already, right? But my thing is number one, it is going to take longer to get there. And it's not going to have the same level of customer service, I believe. And I think you building that rapport with a customer goes a long, long way. I really, really do.
What are your thoughts on them opening up the US market to US sellers? Do you think this will pull sellers away from Etsy? Or is that something that we don't really have to, I don't know if worry about would be the right word. If they do, would that be a good thing or a bad thing? I guess is the better version of that question.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know the answer to that. You don't know the answer to it. I don't think anybody knows the answer. But I also think that if all we're doing is we're playing defense and not offense, we're not going to grow. So what you could do is think about your business and think about, how do I create better products that are more unique? How do I serve my customer? And how do I build a relationship with my customer? And as silly as that sounds, it could be literally you creating your welcome message, letting people know that you're a mother with 3 kids and you're married and you started this business so you could stay home with your kids. Like, you say that versus someone just getting a random thing on Teemu, it's going to go so far. I can't tell you how many times people reach out to my wife and they tell my wife their life story, but also say, "Oh, I grew up in that area too," or I'm about your age," or, "Oh, I have 3 kids too," right? Like, there's things that I guess is overlooked in business by just the relationship and the customer service side and having products that are unique, right? So we put all that together. And what I'm saying here too is, like, you have to work at building your email list, building your customer base. And that's offense. That's not defense. We're not sitting here going like, "Oh, how do I help, or how do I prevent them from stealing my stuff? How do I put watermarks on everything? And how do I do?" That's all defense. But offense is like, how do I get my customer to know me better? How do I get my customer to buy another thing? How do I follow up with my customer? Like, how do I get more reviews? Those are all things that are offensive moves that can increase your sales and build brand loyalty. That's what I would say there.
So a quick hypothetical, and it's just something I'm thinking about here. So Teemu gives you a one-click button to import all your Etsy listings. Same price, whatever. Is that something you are considering doing in that world? Are you adding them in as a sales channel the way it is right now? If you could import everything at the click of a button, obviously it's your quality. So if people are buying from you, they're still getting that quality. Is it enticing to you as an Etsy seller to include them as another channel? Or is there a better place to spend your time, energy, and effort, at least right now, while we're waiting to see if they're going to stick around?
That's a great question. Like, I don't know if we have the answer to that. I think it comes down to, do you want your products represented on that platform? Does it cheapen your brand? Or is it a sales channel that you want to explore? I know personally right now, we're not exploring it. Not saying that we wouldn't, but again, I think it comes down to, how do you want your products and your brand to be represented? We in this bit here that we're talking about, we weren't necessarily talking about it as a sales channel for us, although it could be. We're more or less looking at it like people are stealing stuff and then putting it up on Teemu. And I saw a comment come through and said, "Yeah, they took my pictures, even with my watermarks, and just put them up there." Right. So that is a problem. We saw that with Amazon though. Like, we saw, and actually it's funny. My wife had customers say, "Hey, I just want to let you know, I found this on Amazon merch, and I know it's not you because it's not your name. I just wanted to let you know." And then my wife goes on defense and starts, basically getting these people off. But then all of a sudden it turns into a full-time job. And then it's like, I'm saying to her, "Hey, we got to just stop playing defense and go to offense." And that's what we did. And now, I mean, it's happening, but what are you going to do? right? You can sit here. You have to decide what is going to be best for you. And right now, maybe that is a sale channel that you can explore if all you have to do is click a few buttons and get your products up there to test it. Kind of like Walmart and Amazon back in the day. Like you would take your Amazon product, put them up on Walmart or vice versa. Same thing with eBay. So it is a sales channel. It's not proven yet, at least for me. And I don't know it's the right clientele.
Yeah, and that I think is why I propose that as a hypothetical, right? Like if they're gonna steal your stuff anyway, and you're getting a lot of those people coming back to you, like what's happening with Amazon merch, is it worth throwing the listing up because it's one click of a button? Maybe, but then you also have to think about how that's being used on the back end and how that represents your brand. So if you're interested in pursuing it, they are going to be opening that up. And I don't want to stop anybody from potentially looking at it. But to your point, Scott, the better place to focus is on growing the on-site stuff on Etsy, is on building out the things that are going to make you a real brand, and potentially looking at your own website where you actually control that as well. And regardless of whether you decide to add it, if you wanted to add in Teemu, we need to pay attention to those things and keep in the back of our mind that it's a platform, and at any moment Teemu could go away, or they could pull the old Amazon. Hey, this product sells really well. Let's create 900 knockoffs of it and, create Teemu basics and just go from there. And if we contribute to that, then are we diluting our own profit at the end of the day? And the answer is probably yes. So if you're going to look at something like Teemu, I'm not going to tell you not to, but I will say do all of the basic brand building stuff first, shore up your defenses, start building that email list, look at your own website, and really master what you're doing inside of the Etsy ecosystem and focus on making that defensible. And then potentially consider adding in your TikTok shops, your Teemu, all of these other places that are starting to pop up.
I'd like to poll the live crew that we have here with us. Over 180 of you still on here live with us. And if you are here on the replay, you can play along as well. In the comments, let us know, would you upload your products to Teemu and use Teemu as a sales channel? Let us know in the comments. I'm curious. I know this is gonna, I think it's gonna go probably, well, I'm not gonna say because I don't want to influence it, but I'm just curious. Drop that in the comments. Let us know. I know this is a hot topic. And I'd like to know your thoughts on that. All right. With that being said, Chris, do we have any questions that we want to address here? We do have a new Backstage Pass Club member, Troy. Welcome. Glad to have you. And if you guys are wondering, that's our Backstage Pass Club is where we do Etsy shop audits. We do a batch recording session privately with our Backstage Pass Club members. They get to sit in on it, and these are recorded and then edited, and then we publish them on our YouTube channel weeks and sometimes months later. And you get access to them, well, in the raw format, and you get to ask questions during these. And we're actually doing one tomorrow at noon. So if you wanted to join us, you can just go to brandcreators.com/club, or if you're on YouTube, just click join and you'll see that for under $10, you can become a club member, and we'd love to have you. All right. Any questions, Chris?
Elysian said, I suspect the effect of Teemu on Etsy's growth is already here. It's slow growth, revenue growth in the last 2 years. And you will see some of that. The thing that was interesting to me was the comparison of Amazon's drop in apparel revenue, and then seeing, obviously, that's a big category on Teemu, right? Seeing that happen to individual e-commerce stores, and then seeing that was kind of an important category in terms of growth for Etsy. That's one of the reasons that we wanted to have this conversation. There's a handful of other comments, but I haven't seen any.
Well, I want to read this one here from Dahl. No, I also think it's tacky to just open a shop and put some ugly designs on shirts, cups, etc. I mean, it's supposed to be unique, creative items, not trash. And Dahl, I agree with you. I'm with you. Like there's a lot of crap being put up there on Etsy. And I think Etsy is also going to probably have something down the line that's going to come in and clean this up. It has to. I mean, they still have to clean up some Disney stuff and, some trademark stuff, but we won't get into that topic because I know that'll blow up. So
maybe if you were on Teemu, they'd police other people stealing your stuff if possible, maybe. But who knows? What they're doing right now is kind of the opposite of Etsy, right? Etsy is focusing really on the buyer experience. Teemu's all about buyer acquisition. all they're trying to do is get as many people using the platform as possible. So they're going to let as many listings be on the platform as possible because they want all of the different lines in the water to try to attract people in until they start to get a lot of pushback. And if they're opening it up to US sellers, they're going to have a lot more pushback on copyrighted or trademarked things that are popping up. That will start to happen, and you may see them pull back a lot of that. The other one that seemed to have fallen off the face of the earth was Shein. And Fatty Pancake says they got hit with a bunch of lawsuits because a lot of people had their artwork stolen. And in fact, they got hit with a lawsuit because they copied almost identically fashion YouTubers design, like an outfit that she created and did a bunch of videos on, right? Like on the creation process. And they took that and whether it was the same factory or whatever, they just watched the videos and duplicated it directly and then went to sell it for, 1/10 of the price or whatever. And I know that was one of the lawsuits that popped up there, but it's just one of those things, right? Anytime a new player enters the space, we have to be prepared for the competition. And if we can focus on doing the things defensively that we need to do, then we can go on offense and get aggressive and not have to worry about it. Right.
Yeah. Here was I want to answer this one on the Etsy Plus. When do you think it's good to pay for Etsy Plus? I would say as soon as possible. And I mean, they give you, I think it's a $5 ad credit every month. So that pays for that. You do get some more customizable features for your shop. So you can have that slider that goes across that shows more of your items. You also, what else do you get on that, Chris? Now I'm trying to remember on the Etsy Plus. Oh, I know. You can also customize like your featured items up top. So you can literally put in, like, if you wanted to, like a thumbnail image on each one. So it would say like categories or your popular ones. So it would have that. But right off the bat, you're able to get $5 credit. You also get, like, I think on shipping supplies, you get a discount if you ship stuff. So to me, it is a no-brainer in a sense. And I also think it's on your listing fees. I think it does something there too. So yeah, I think as soon as possible. I also think that when you do that, it could show Etsy like, oh, this shop's serious. They're willing to pay for this. Let's give them a little bit more attention. Right. So that could be a factor. I'm not saying it's going to give you like a huge bump in your rankings, but it does show them that you're willing to invest in your business.
Elysian said, yeah, listing fees and ad fees, you get basically the same amount you're spending back as long as you're taking advantage of the credits. And that I'll take a couple bucks in free ads any chance that I can get it. Right.
Sure.
I think one of the things that's interesting, guys, let us know in the comments if it's something you'd like us to cover. And Scott, I know you and I talked quickly about this yesterday, is that Etsy is surveying some sellers about potentially changing that program and adding some levels to it, maybe making some changes. So if that's something you guys would like to know a little bit more about, let us know in the comments and we can dive into that at some other point.
Yeah. So let me see. We got any other quick questions here? If you guys have any questions, let us know. I see a lot of mixed. Yes, I would give it a try. If it was a one-click option, I would test it. Some people are like, heck no, I'm going to run the other way, 100 miles an hour. Deborah, she shared something here. I had a friend that had Teemu steal a picture of a huge expensive wreath she had on Etsy. She ordered out of curiosity, and it was a felt cutout of the wreath with cheap florals glued to it.
So it's the Grinch version, right? And like, yeah, your wreath we have to take down because it has a light that won't light on one side.
Yeah. Right? So I mean, there you go, though, right? That's a quality thing that's probably going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, there's always going to be, crap. But I think there is a valid point in saying, like, Amazon has done this, and this is, I mean, in the Amazon world, this is a big deal for a lot of sellers. It's like, and it does feel underhanded. I don't see Etsy doing this. So let's give Etsy a round of applause for not doing this. Okay. And what I mean is they're not looking at the data, sales data, and saying like, oh, that pan sells really well by this brand. Why don't we create a Amazon basics of it? they're basically then going to compete with you and you know they're going to win, right? Etsy's not doing that. All the Amazon basics are products that were proven to sell before they ever launched them. So Etsy's not doing that. Someone said maybe Teemu is going to do that. And I would see Teemu doing it before I'd see Etsy doing it, to be honest with you. Teemu to me just seems shady. I don't know. I don't know if it's me. It just seems shady. And maybe it's because I know that it's coming from overseas and that like they are stealing stuff, and whether it's them directly or whoever's posting the stuff, but they are deliberately like stealing like designs, or they're stealing mock-ups, or a branded, like your watermark is over the picture. Anybody, have you guys have had that happen? Drop it in the comments. Let us know if you've had something stolen from you and put up on Teemu. Put that in the comments.
Amazon Basics, rest in peace. Didn't they get sued for doing that? Yeah, probably, but they're allowed to because it's in the terms of service, right? That they can use the sales data. And I think the difference between somebody like an Amazon, a Teemu, a Wish, and an Etsy is that Etsy really is about unique products. And so it'd be weird for them to sell their own stuff. And for all of the gripes that we have about some of the weird things that happen in the Etsy platform, and all of the things that we would want to see improved, like getting the search analytics report out of beta, please, would be great. They do truly seem to understand that they are a platform that connects buyers to sellers. They're not also trying to be the seller. And I think that is kind of the biggest difference in the look and feel of the Etsy platform, not just because they're more unique products, so it would just be weird to create them, but because they know that their place in this ecosystem is to act as the connection point versus just trying to collect as much money as possible. They have other ways of doing that, like launching more ad placements, creating more repeat buyers, all of the things that we've been talking about on this live, that they don't have to even think about the creation side of this. And it would actually just be a waste of their time to do so. So it's just a totally different model, and I'm all for it.
This is crazy. Not only have they stolen my design, but I watermark. They just reprinted it with my watermark still on it and sent it to their customer. That's insane, right? Like, really? I've seen several other digital designers things on Teemu as well. Yeah, that's the old design shop. Yes, my designs are all over Teemu, as mentioned. Yeah, it is crazy. And someone else said here, where was it? Deborah says, if they steal product pics, etc., what would stop them from stealing bank info?
Two different things, but valid point anyway, right? The bank info would be Teemu versus a random seller on Teemu.
True.
Right? Teemu is like Etsy, like Amazon. It's not necessarily the company itself, but also, right? Like what is the accountability? If there's no accountability on the copyright trademark side of things, if somebody hacks into Teemu, is there any accountability on the backside of that? Probably not.
Yeah, Krista says it's known that you get your credit card information stolen from Teemu too. Happened to me and 4 other people I know. Yeah. I can't verify it, but I believe you. I mean, yeah. I mean, these are all valid concerns. All valid. Let's see. Wendy says, pretty sure Teemu is a platform. They're not the sellers per se. So it's the sleds. They are the thieves,
sellers that are thieves, not Teemu.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And maybe,
but also, right? Like,
right.
If they don't care about the activity for sellers, is there any accountability on the back end? Now, for Etsy, even with all of the complaints about they could do more to crack down on copyright, they could crack down. And I think what I saw an article title the other day, Scott, that was like, scammers are using Etsy as a piggy bank or something, right? Because they're they're duplicating hot selling products and then never fulfilling it and then closing their account. Etsy's already taken action to do that. Yeah, and it's, again, one of the things that we talked about that we'll cover at a later date, but they're trying really hard to combat any of that image. And you don't necessarily see that same approach from Teemu. And it's because they're in 2 different places, right? Mm-hmm. Teemu has money to literally light on fire. And the way that they're doing that is running ads everywhere possible, doing everything they can do to acquire more customers. Etsy's goal is to, yes, acquire more customers, but really to walk them down that pipeline that we've been talking about for the last 2 hours of new customer to new buyer to repeat buyer to what were they calling it? Super duper awesome repeat buyer. You know, the people who are
Habituals.
buying $200
Yeah.
and more than 6 times a year. I forget what their terminology was for that. But it's just a difference in approach.
Yep. Marion wanted to know, do I need to start a new shop? Well, I think that was from the previous question. And I think I think your account is up and running.
Yeah, splitting between the US and other places in the world, you
Got
don't
it.
have to.
Yeah.
You can sell anywhere in the world from anywhere in the world. What you would probably want to have is a backup supplier. That is a European-based supplier for whatever you plan on selling all around the world, just to save a little bit on shipping costs and improve that shipping time.
Yeah. All right, cool. I think we answered a bunch of questions. But guess what? If you want to hang out with us tomorrow and well, watch us dive into 2 Etsy shops that we're going to be doing full audits on, and we're going to be doing an Etsy ads review with another one of our members, well, you can, if you haven't gotten enough of us or you're sick of us, but you can join us tomorrow for under $10, by the way. And you can do that by joining our Backstage Pass Club. If you go to brandcreators.com/club, and I'm looking for it here. There it is. If you go there, you can sign up, and it's literally like 2 clicks. And then you will see a video player that is designated for tomorrow's live that we're going to be doing, and it's for members only. And if you'd like to join us, we'd love to have you. And you get to ask your questions there as well. Because as we're doing these Etsy shop audits, and we don't know what these Etsy shop audits look like as of yet. So what we do is we open up the computer, we get the Etsy shop owner on, Chris and I, we meet, we go through some different information that we've already acquired from them. And then from there, we start digging into what is the problem? What is the goal? How can we help you get there? And that's literally it. And then we just start digging. Everyone we've done so far, we've been able to find some growth opportunities. And I'm pretty sure we're going to tomorrow as well. First time that we're doing an Etsy shop review, though, as a audit. And we're going to be doing that tomorrow as well. So if you'd like to be part of that, we'd love to have you. Again, go to brandcreators.com/club. Or if you're on YouTube right now, well, you can just click join next to the subscribe button, and you can join us. And then you will, you'll see that it's right there waiting for you for when we go live. You don't have to leave YouTube. You just stay right there. And we will be showing up tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern time. All right. So that is going to wrap up this long but very necessary episode. And if you guys have any other questions in the meantime, you can always drop them in the comments. We can't be sure 100% we're going to be able to get to them, but if you want to make sure that we get to them, make sure that you join the Backstage Pass Club, and you can ask us questions there and we'll answer them. All right. So that's it. That's going to wrap it up. As always, take care, take action, have an awesome, amazing day, and we'll see you right back here on the next episode. Take care, guys.